Hi, my name is Prashant Mathavan. I'm also known as Kiki Mathavan. I was born and brought up in Kashmir. So that's how my love for the mountains started. And then my mom's family and my wife's family are also connected to the mountains in Himachal Pradesh. So that was the start of a love affair with the Himalayas. And it's a love affair which has been happening since then. I've been exploring the mountains, trying to find out about the history, the geography, and the culture of the mountains. Because I feel that people till now have only, they just come to the mountains for the aesthetics. They don't really go behind the scenes or behind, like they could see a mountain here, but then they would never know which range this is, which peak this is, watershed this is, which river this is, where it originates. For example, right now it's sitting by the Tirthan River. It originates in the Tirthan glacier high up in the Great Himalayan National Park. It joins the Sanj and the Beas at Ot. Of course, then it becomes the Beas. Then the Beas joins the Ravi joins the Chenab, and finally they join the father river of all rivers, the Indus, and finally goes to this water will one day end up in the Arabian Sea. So all these things about geography of the rivers and the mountains and the peaks makes the whole thing very interesting. So that is what I am really interested in, and that is what I'm interested in promoting.
So, how did you become interested in the history of the mountains?
See, it was more of searching for your own historical roots, and then you start reading, and then I started reading accounts of the various Western explorers, from Moorcroft to Vine to Jacques Vallemont, and
It's quite a few of them.
quite a few of them. So I have read their accounts, and their accounts are by far the most interesting accounts you can read about the mountains. In fact, it was in the account of Baron van Hugel that I first read about my own village, which is in what is now Pakistan occupied Kashmir, where we are originally from, and that talks about my village. And then I've been reading the gazettes, the old gazetteers, which have a lot of information about the mountains. So I'm just trying to share all the knowledge that I've accumulated over a period of time with people, and.
Please share with us a story if you can.
Okay, I'll share with you, which is probably one of my most favorite. It's not really a story; it's more of the history of the Western Himalayas, especially after the collapse of the Mughal Empire, and which very few people have the knowledge of. Of course, it would entail the history of Himachal Pradesh and the history of my favorite state, which is Jammu and Kashmir, and of course, some snippets of Trans-Himalayan history as well. Basically, where it starts is at the collapse of the Mughal Empire, when the British had just started coming in the mid 18th century. The Marathas were the paramount power in India, in central India and northern India, and they were expanding northwards, which brought them into collision with the Afghans. That was when the Marathas had taken the fort at Attock, which was probably one of the most strategic forts in North Punjab, right at the point where the Indus comes out of the Himalayas, and Attock also controlled the route which connected Punjab with Afghanistan as well as with Central Asia. Of course, the collision between the Afghans and the Marathas was inevitable, and which finally happened in the epic battle of the Third Battle of Panipat, in which both sides suffered great losses. Of course, the Marathas lost the war, but it did not leave the Afghans also uninjured. They also suffered heavy losses. So, of course, the Afghans withdrew and the Marathas withdrew, and what this did was it created a vacuum in northern India. And at that time, there were three powers in northern India who were not jostling among themselves, but rising at that time and becoming powerful forces. This was towards the end of the 18th century, namely the British. And then there were the Gorkhas were on the rise under Prithvi Narayan Shah. In the Punjab, it was the Sikh Missals. Missals were the confederacy, the different sects of Sikhs who had organized themselves militarily. So at that time arose a character who I often say is my most favorite person in the history of the Himalayas. He might not have been born in the Himalayas, but he has shaped the history of the Himalayas in a way that it still affects us to this day and age. His name was, of course, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who was also known as Sher-e-Punjab. His rise to power was very dramatic. He first went to war when he was just 13 years old, and by the time he was 16, he had crowned himself the king of the Sikhs. He had united all the Sikh missiles. Now the Sikhs were a very powerful confederacy, who even the British were wary of. So, and of course, by this time, the Marathas had also kind of reorganized themselves after the loss in Panipat and after the first Anglo-Maratha war. They still had some fight left in them. And it was around that time that Yashwantrao Holkar, who was the king of Indore, the Maratha chieftain of Indore, got into a battle with the British, which was the second Anglo-Maratha war. Of course, the Holkar couldn't stand up to the British, so he sought refuge. He came with his army. He came to Lahore, and he sought help from Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The thing about Maharaja Ranjit Singh was that he was a battle-hardened soldier, but at the same time, he was a very good tactician and a reader of men's character. He had something about him which I don't know how to explain it. He was not a virtuous man, but
He
today's
had quite
standards,
some vices too, right? From what we hear.
what is a man who doesn't have a vice? If we didn't have vices, we'll all be priests. Who would want to live in a world full of priests? Anyways, Yashwantrao Holkar asked him for help, and he was very hospitable, very nice to him. But then he took the decision that he would not get into a fight. He was not ready to get into a fight with the British just right now. It was 1805. So he decided to mediate between the British and the Holkar, which he successfully did. The kingdom of the Holkar border was marked at Narmada, and the Holkar was let go, and he went back to Indore. But after this incident, the British became wary of all anti-British elements coming down to Ranjit Singh and asking him for help, because the British, smart as they were, knew the only person who was capable of giving them a good fight was Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his army of the Sikhs, who were called the Sarkar Khalsa. And but the one thing British were not ready to do was face the Sikhs in battle. So they decided to have a treaty with him, and it was an informal treaty at first that Ranjit Singh would keep his forces to the left of the Satluj, whereas the British, so he was free to go up north or go west of the Satluj, but he as per the agreed terms, he couldn't come onto this side of the Satluj. What this did, in effect, was left the Sikhs sandwiched between the British on one side and the powerful Duranis, the Afghans, on the other side. So the only way he could spread his empire was north. And of course, in the north lay one of the most prized possessions, which was Kashmir, which was sought after by emperors and kings in centuries. Yes, it still is. It still has. It still hasn't come out of that.
Different story altogether.
Yeah. So while all this was happening, all these the Maratha, the Sikhs, and the British was happening, the Gurkhas, who are another fighting race, had started their conquests. Of course, they were started just like the Sikhs had their Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The Gurkhas had the great Prithvi Narayan Shah, who started the Gurkha conquests, which started with the conquest of the Kathmandu Valley. And of course, by this time, the Gurkhas had overrun Garhwal and Kumaon, and they were now knocking at the gates of the Kangra fort. The Gurkhas were again led by another great general who was called Bada Qazi. His name was Amar Singh Thapa. He in fact was the guy who built the Great White Temple at Badrinath, because he was quite a religious man, but he was also a very good general. So he laid siege to the fort of Kangra. Now, Kangra is one of the most strategic forts in the Western Himalayas. It is said whoever controls Kangra controls the access to the entire mountain range, the entire Himalayas. It is said that the Gurkhas, their intention after taking Kangra was to take Kashmir. Just like everybody else, the Gurkhas also wanted Kashmir. As it happened at that time, the king of Kangra was himself a powerful Rajput king from the Katoch dynasty. His name was Sansar Chand Katoch, and he was again a very powerful king. And he was amongst the most powerful hill rajas. So hill rajas is a term we use for all the small kingdoms which exist in the Himalayas who had Rajput kings with Dogra linkages. He had consolidated quite a bit of the hills for himself. He had overrun a few of his neighboring kingdoms. And of course, the Sansar Chand Katoch used to often get into engagements, I would call them, with Ranjit Singh. They had faced each other quite a few times. But at this time, the Katoch ruler was unable to fend off the Gurkhas. So what he did was he asked Ranjit Singh, who was his traditional rival, for help. Now at this time, Ranjit Singh had an idea of who he wanted on his side and who he didn't. So he told Sansar Chand Katoch that he would try to help him, and in return he would want the Kangra fort for himself. Now this was quite a hard bargain, but Sansar Chand had no option. Otherwise the Gurkhas would have overrun everything and he would have lost his complete kingdom. He just had to give a fort to the Sikhs, and that was it. Ranjit Singh now sent an emissary, an ambassador to General Amar Singh Thapa, asking him to end the siege of the Kangra fort and leave peacefully and vacate the area, vacate all the hill areas that they had captured, which of course he refused, because General Amar Singh Thapa was aware of the treaty between the British and Ranjit Singh. But what made him even angrier was Ranjit Singh's offer of supporting the Gurkhas whenever they meet the English in battle. With the rise of the Gurkhas and their spread, it was inevitable that they would one day clash with the British. But of course, Amar Singh Thapa knew that Ranjit Singh already had signed an agreement, had a treaty, which was done in 1809. The events I'm talking about is 1809. He knew they had a treaty with the British, and at the same time he was trying to get him on his side. So of course he was incensed. It said he was so angry that he imprisoned the guy who took the message to him, and he decided to press on with his goal of capturing Kangra fort. So of course Ranjit Singh had no option. The Sikh forces were sent, the Gurkha supply lines were cut, and the Sikhs and the Gurkhas met in battle. And both are great fighters. It was an even fight, but of course the Sikhs had the advantage and the Gurkhas had no option but to flee. But smartly they fled across the Satluj where the Sikhs couldn't go, and they captured all the other kingdoms from Sirmaur to all the Shimla hill states, all the Thakurais. They captured all of them and they sat pretty over there. And of course the Sikhs now took the Kangra fort. So we were in 1809. Ranjit Singh was sitting pretty on the fort of Kangra, and the Gurkhas were on the other side of the Satluj. Of course, it was not long before the Gurkhas and the British got into a war, which was the Anglo-Gurkha War, started in 1815. The Gurkhas gave a good account of themselves, but the British won. The British prevailed, and of course the Gurkhas were ejected from Himachal also. and at the present borders of Nepal were defined by the Treaty of Sagoli, which was signed after the defeat of the Gurkhas in the first in this particular war. But of course, the British were highly impressed by the courage and the fighting spirit of the Gurkhas. That's why till today we have Gurkhas serving in the British Army, which is a legacy of the same war. So, of course, while this was happening, on the other side, Kashmir. Now let me come to Kashmir. Kashmir at that time, this is around 1812, if I'm not mistaken. Kashmir at that time was under the Afghans. And as it so happened, the Durdani Shah Shuja was in the throne in Afghanistan, and there was always infighting. There were different claimants to the throne, and his other brother, I don't remember his name right now, took the throne from him and put Shah Shuja was on the run. So the Afghan governor of Kashmir invited Shah Shuja to come to Kashmir because he told him that, okay, Kashmir is also a part of the Afghan kingdom. So you can rule Afghanistan from Kashmir instead of ruling Kashmir from Afghanistan. It made sense to Shah Shuja. So he ended up in Kashmir. But what the governor of Kashmir did was put him in prison at the Hari Parbat Fort in Srinagar. And of course, that was that. And by that time, the Afghan governor had also fallen out with the Durrani rulers of Kabul, who wanted to teach him a lesson. So a force was made ready in Kabul to take back Kashmir and to bring back the erring governor and also get Shah Shuja back. So earlier they used to have a free run coming from Kabul to Kashmir, but now there was a new obstacle. The obstacle's name was Maharaja Ranjit Singh.
He's there now.
He's there now, and his territory fell on the way. So the Afghans realized that they could not mount any kind of campaign in Kashmir without the help of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So they sent an emissary to the Maharaja, asking him for assistance on this expedition to Kashmir. The Maharaja said, of course, he saw this as an opportunity. He said yes, and the Afghans promised him half of whatever booty they get in Kashmir would be given to the Sikhs. So the Sikhs and the Afghans and the Sikhs decided to mount a joint campaign on Kashmir. The Sikh forces were led by Diwan Mokham Chand, and the Afghan forces were, of course, led by one of the Durrani generals, and they marched together into Kashmir. But what happened was that the Afghans told the Sikhs to come from another pass, and they took an easier pass. So in fact, they reached Kashmir before the Sikhs, and they overwhelmed the local governor, and they also got Shah Shuja. But as per the terms with the Sikhs, the Sikhs had made the Afghans promise that no harm would come to either Shah Shuja or the governor. So the Sikh forces arrived in Kashmir one day after the Afghan forces. As it happened, they told the Sikhs that you didn't take part in any of the confrontation or the battle, so we won't give you anything. So of course the Sikhs were perturbed. Diwan Mokham Chand had no option but to ask Ranjit Singh what to do. And Ranjit Singh told him to get Shah Shuja and governor of the Kashmir governor and get them back to Lahore and come back without any kind of confrontation with the Afghans. So what was happening behind the scenes was, apparently, as per one version, the wife of Shah Shuja had promised Ranjit Singh the Kohinoor diamond.
The Kohinoor diamond.
The Kohinoor diamond, the one and only Kohinoor diamond. in exchange for getting her husband out of the prison in Kashmir and handing him over to her safe and sound in Lahore. So the Ranjit Singh had the biggest diamond in the world. He didn't care if he didn't get half of the booty. What he had was the governor, and so the Sikhs retreated peacefully. But as it happened, the governor of Kashmir, his brother, was in charge of the Atak fort. So the Sikhs convinced his brother to hand over the Atak fort without a fight to the Sikhs. And Diwan Moham Chand got Atak fort without a fight. Of course, this incensed the Duranis, and this now set the Sikhs and the Duranis and the Afghans on a war path. Anyway, Shah Shuja came to Lahore. Ranjit Singh got his Kohinoor. And what did he do with the Kohinoor? He mounted it on its favorite horse. And Ranjit Singh was that kind of a man.
Wow.
You would think he would give it to his favorite wife or his favorite girl in the harem, but no. He mounted it on his favorite horse. That was the kind of man he was. Well, anyways, the Sikhs decided to then, from attack, they decided to attack the Afghan forces in Kashmir. And they did, but they were beaten back badly by the Afghans. Mainly because they didn't have any expertise in fighting in the mountains. Till now, all the Sikhs had been fighting only in the foothills and not really up in the mountains.
The Afghans were masters.
The Afghans were masters at it. The Sikhs lost and they come back, and this caused a major humiliation for Ranjit Singh. He took it very personally. So Kashmir had to wait. Of course, then I told you about how that war ended, the British Gurkha War. And as a result of that war, a lot of Gurkhas joined the British, but even a greater number of Gurkhas joined Ranjit Singh's army. In fact, even at that time, all the Gurkhas who went out to join the army was called Lahoriyas, because they were all going to Lahore to join the army of Ranjit Singh. As fate would have it, Ranjit Singh now had the best mountain warriors in his team. So of course, we know what was coming. Of course, I forgot to tell you another interesting incident which happened during the course of time. When the British were about to go to war with the Gurkhas, the Gurkha Prime Minister Bhimsen Thapa sent a message to the Maratha Scindia, asking him for help in the name of Hinduism against the British. So, interestingly, Scindia told him that he would only support the Gurkhas if Ranjit Singh also supported them. And now it was the turn of Amar Singh Thapa to send a message to Ranjit Singh asking him for his help against the British. The tables had turned. 6 years back, it was Ranjit Singh who had offered him help against the British. And 6 years down the line, it was him who was asking Ranjit Singh for help. But of course, Ranjit Singh would have none of it. He knew when the Gurkhas and the British go to war, both of them will become weaker. His two main rivals will be weaker. And if both your rivals are fighting and getting weaker, you don't get involved. You just enjoy it. He was a smart guy, as I always say. Of course, after this, as I told you, a lot of Gurkhas joined the British army, but even a greater number joined the Sikh army. And at the same time, there emerged in the court of Ranjit Singh a certain character who, of course, history knows him very well now. His name was Dogra Gulab Singh. He was from Jammu, from the royal family of Jammu, and he joined the services of Ranjit Singh. And not only he, two of his brothers, Dhyan Singh and Suchet Singh, also joined the services of of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and apparently Maharaja Ranjit Singh had a great liking for the guys who now we famously know as the Dogra brothers. By this time, Ranjit Singh had become more powerful. It was 1818, and he still hadn't forgotten the loss of Kashmir. Of course, he never had Kashmir, but he tried it and he didn't get it. So he was eager to get it back because now he knew he was placed very well to take Kashmir. So another expedition was mounted towards Kashmir, and of course now it was led by the very famous General Hari Singh Nalwa. I don't know how many have heard of how many of you have heard of him, but he's the same guy who's mentioned in that very famous song "Mere Desh Ki Dharti," and it says "Rang Hara hai Hari Singh Nalwe se." So Hari Singh Nalwa led the Sikh armies into Kashmir, and of course this time the Sikh army was very powerful, and of course it had Gurkha element, it had the Dogra element. Both were hillmen, and this time they were able to evade the Afghans. And finally, Ranjit Singh had the crown. He had Kashmir. But the irony is, he could never visit Kashmir. He was so always engrossed in the affairs of the state, and he could never leave the Punjab. But then that was that. He got Kashmir, so at least the scores were settled. So, of course, by this time, the Dogra brothers had risen in court. They were very powerful figures. So, in 1821, Raja Gulab Singh was crowned as the king of Jammu by none other than Ranjit Singh himself. The Dogras were very powerful by this time. And of course, some of the Punjabi Sikhs saw them as kind of outsiders, and of course there were some differences. So there were these two different sections in Ranjit Singh's court, the Dogras and then the other Sikh Sardars who weren't really fond of each other. But then of course, as long as Ranjit Singh was in control, everybody was loyal to him, everybody was loyal to Ranjit Singh, and nobody could even think of dissent or going against what Ranjit Singh said. Now he had Kashmir. His empire was expanding, and in 1834, one of the Dogra generals of Gulab Singh decided to mount. Of course, Gulab Singh was a vassal of Sikh Empire. He himself was a general in the Sikh army. So, and Zorawar Singh accomplished stuff which even even trained trekkers would find hard to doing, like taking an army of 5,000 over the very treacherous Umasila Pass, and that too in the month of October, which by the time winter had set in. Even today we have hardly 10 people from outside who cross the Umasila. There are, of course, some people from Zanskar who come over to Kishtwar using the Umasila, but it's only for the locals and very seasoned trekkers who even attempt the Umasila Pass. So that talks a lot about the character of the man and his fighting hillmen. Of course, he took Ladakh. Next he took Baltistan. Then, of course, Gilgit and all these areas. And finally, he decided to mount a campaign on Tibet. So his army was composed of the Dogras, of course, the Sikhs, and then there were Ladakhis, there were Baltis, there were Gilgitis, and they started their march towards Lhasa, as Zorawar Singh said, that I would conquer Lhasa. They went all the way to the Mansarovar Lake, and capturing the Mansarovar Lake and Kailash Parvat was like, for as everybody is aware that the Mansarovar Lake and the Kailash Parvat are the holiest of the holy for Hindus and the Buddhists. So that was in a very religious kind of way the best gift a general could give to his king, to capture the holiest of the holies for him. But as it so happened that I guess he pushed his luck too far, and winter set up on him, and the Chinese Imperial Army moved in to face Zorawar Singh. And Zorawar Singh, true to his nature, didn't believe in going back. And when he heard that there was a big detachment of Tibetan troops and the Imperial Chinese army coming to face him, he decided to attack them instead of waiting for them to attack. And it was a battle. It's called the Battle of Toyo. It was on the 12th of December on a very, very, very cold Tibetan winter day, and the engagement was fought at 14,000 feet. So people who are aware of the mountains would generally be kind of aware what kind of weather is there at 14,000 feet in December. And of course, Dogras fought well, the Zorawar's men fought well, but they were overwhelmed. Most of them were killed, including Zorawar Singh, and others had to flee. And now the Chinese and the Tibetans moved back into Ladakh. They started pushing the Dogras back, and they captured Leh and Ladakh. Of course, when this news came to Gulab Singh, he was quite incensed. So a big army was dispatched via Kashmir, and they defeated, they forced the Chinese and the Tibetans to flee from Leh, and the final engagement of place was somewhere near Chushul, where the present day Chinese and Indian border is, and after that a treaty was signed between the Kingdom of Punjab and China, which demarcates the border of India and China as it exists today. Of course, now a lot of things have happened at the border, and but at least the border in some part was defined by the Treaty of Chushul, which was signed by Maharaja Sher Singh, because by that time Ranjit Singh had passed away in 1839 of old age, and incidentally Zorawar Singh also passed on in the same year. Of course, after the death of Ranjit Singh, the Sikh Empire wasn't the same. The man who held it together was gone. There was a lot of infighting amongst various claimants to the throne, and one king would come, he would die, then the other would come, and then it was a power struggle basically between the Sikh Sardars and the Dogra brothers. So that was a very bad phase in Sikh history, and out of the three Dogra brothers, two were killed in this in the mayhem that followed the death of Ranjit Singh, and it was only Dogra Gulab Singh who managed to somehow survive this very tumultuous period and make it back to Jammu. And of course, all the time the British were watching this. So in 1945, the British decided to take on the Sikhs. And the Sikhs expected Raja Gulab Singh to help them. But Raja Gulab Singh was already in a convenient arrangement with the British. Now, a lot of Sikh historians and other historians call him various names, and but I think it's every man for himself. You have to think about your own interest. All politicians do that. All statesmen do that. It's always your interest. You don't have friends. You have only interests. I can change my friends today for my interest. That's what happens in global geopolitics nowadays. But you cannot really judge a man by a decision he made based on emotions. And if you actually look at it, the only part of the Sikh Empire which survived all the way till 1947 was the Kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir, which was a creation of the Sikh Empire. But it survived, and the Dogra dynasty ruled it for a good 102 years, because they got it in 1845 after the first Anglo-Sikh war, when the Sikhs were defeated and they had to give war indemnity to the British, and they offered the Jalandhar Doab and Kashmir, because the Sikhs, the English had asked for a war indemnity of 1.5 crores. So the British took the Jalandhar Doab, but Gulab Singh offered to pay the other 75 lakh Nanak Shahis, as it was called at that time, and in return he got Kashmir. Now, of course, another set of historians always say that Kashmir was bought by General Gulab Singh. Raja Gulab Singh. That's true in a sense of the word, but then conquest is like that. Either you kill everybody, either you get it in battle, or you get. That's how rulers change. I find this whole thing about buying Kashmir a little. It's how you get it. The means don't matter. The result matters.
True.
At that time, we cannot judge people of that time by the morality standards of today. It was a different age. They were different people. So, when people say buy, would you rather have had like thousands of Kashmiris killed? And actually, it was not the Kashmiris who were fighting. It was always outsiders who were fighting over them. Of course, I don't want to give an emotional thing to Kashmir, but at the end of the day, Maharaja Gulab Singh became the emperor, not the emperor, but the king of the Maharaja of one of the biggest states in India called Jammu and Kashmir. And the Sikhs eventually were taken over, who lost the second Anglo-Sikh war. So in 1847, the Sikh Empire also came to an end. And the only survivor of all this mayhem which occurred in the mountains was Raja Gulab Singh, who was now the Maharaja of Riyasat-e Jammu and Kashmir. So after this, you all know the story. So this is all for tonight. Signing off.
That was like going back into history.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking us there, because not a lot of people delve into Himalayan history so much. And I think the history of Kashmir pre all this independence, the real history of Kashmir. Thank you for taking us through it.